Welcome to the Byte Code. I'm your Shafu, and today's episode's about Liquity V2. And to talk about that, I have Bojan from the Liquity team on. Bojan, thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
For sure, for sure. So Bojan just told me he's a very busy man because the Liquity team is very close to launching Liquity V2. So first of all, congrats on that. Which is awesome. How far away are we approximately?
So we put out a tweet a couple of days ago that the launch is coming in January, unless some unexpected surprise comes up, which didn't happen yet. So we are T minus 15 at the maximum. So very close. We can smell it.
Awesome, awesome. So 2 weeks at most.
Yes.
Nice. Awesome. Let's get into it. So, okay, so Liquity, one of the OGs of decentralized stablecoins in the space. When did the original Liquity protocol launch?
So the launch was in April 2021, 5th of April 2021. So it will be almost 4 years by now. But the
Wow.
development started like almost 2 years ago. So mid 2019 is where the founders met, Robert and Rick, our founders. And this is where the idea came to be because Robert saw quite a few improvements on the original maker, on the Psi design, and he wanted to execute on them pretty much. So he was looking for a developer, which he found in Rick, and then just things unfolded since then. So it took about 18 months of development, security, all of that work for it to launch, as I said, in April of 2021.
Interesting. So in terms of DeFi, you're basically a dinosaur at this point,
Yeah, I guess we
2021.
are we are not Ava level, but closely behind. Yes.
Nice. So obviously a lot has happened in this time, and Liquity famously is an immutable protocol. So if you want to do something new, you have to do this, like Uniswap thing, V1, V2, V3, V4, it's always an immutable protocol. So what have you guys learned from V1 and what did you guys change in V2?
That's a very big question. So the obvious thing is uh, what we didn't anticipate for V1, what no one anticipated even from the community, is that having fixed rates is a problem. So Liquidity has a fixed borrow rate, interest rate of 50 basis points. You pay that upfront to use to get this liquidity or to borrow as a fee, as a one-off fee, and then you don't pay any interest anymore, which was good until the macroeconomic environment changed with higher interest rates led by the Fed. This then resulted in, or trickled down into DeFi as well, and resulted in borrowing protocols or CDPs, lending markets having higher rates as well, demanding higher rates. So everyone around Liquidity had rates of 5%, 7, 10% or whatever, and Liquidity stayed at 50 basis points, so 10 or 20 times cheaper. This then resulted in two things. A lot of LUSD holders dumping into other protocols, into Maker or into Athena, because the yield was higher there, or minting and dumping because the borrowing rate was so low in Liquidity. The result of that was that this constant selling pressure was affecting the peg negatively. So LUSD was going below peg, which resulted in many redemptions. Redemptions is a peg maintenance mechanism in V1. And as a result, because redemption starts from the riskiest loans, so from those which have the most risky collateral ratios. And because there was so much of those redemptions, this level went higher and higher and higher, and reached by now, a year and a half or so later, levels of 4, 5, 600%. Translated into LTV, that's like LTV of 30 or 20 is safe, which is absolutely not capital efficient. So even though no one is losing money, there are no security flaws or anything, the protocol is not usable or is not working as intended. So this is the main problem we learned, or which came to be in V1, that you have also to consider the broader economic environment. And that's also the major change that we did in V2. So redemptions are still present, because that is still the best decentralized way to protect the peg of a stablecoin to the downside. You're not relying on any third parties or collateralized assets, or centralized assets, sorry. So redemptions are still present, but they are not ordered by loan to value anymore, but by the interest rate the user sets. And this is also the main innovation that we are introducing with V2, which are user set rates. So far in DeFi, the rates are either set by a governance, like in Maker, they say it's going to be 5% now and 5.5 tomorrow, or by utilization rates, like in lending markets. So how much is used, the balance between demand and supply sets the rate, sets the cost of the capital, so to say. In V2, every user will be able to set its own rate wherever he wants. It can be 1% or 15%, it doesn't matter. What we want to achieve with that is a DeFi native market base rate for borrowing, for the cost to acquire stablecoin liquidity. You can think of it as knowledge of the crowd, knowledge of the masses, which should set a forward-looking rate based on the expectations of our users. So at the beginning, most likely this rate will follow whatever Aave or Maker are doing to a certain degree, but this should then decouple, because all of those rates are kind of backward-looking or reactive, while the V2 rate should be forward-looking and kind of set the pace for the DeFi industry, so to say. So user set rates are very important, because not only are we fixing the redemption issue from V1, but also trying to set a new standard for DeFi, or for pricing the cost of stablecoin liquidity.
Interesting. Okay, so talk about liquidations, right? So the big thing about, okay, I'm just gonna put in 0% interest rate is that I'm gonna be redeemed against first, right?
Exactly, yes.
Okay, okay. So that's interesting. So you basically have a market that, I don't know, is a good way to think about it, that basically the market decides like the utilization rate function that you have in Aave, something like that. Like it's one step further than what Aave is doing, for example.
Yes, you can say that.
Has this been tried before?
No, this is the first time in DeFi or TradFi, as far as I know, that someone is doing that. But it makes sense, I mean, in theory at least, because users are motivated in the most efficient way possible to set a good rate, which is they are motivated by their pocket. On one side, they want to pay as little as possible, so they want to lose as little money as possible on the interest rate, on the borrow fee. So that's the one side. On the other side, they don't want to be redeemed. They don't want to lose or have their collateral swapped into debt. So it's a balance which every user needs to decide on himself, and this then in aggregate sets the optimum rate, so to say, for the cost of both our stablecoin. It might take a couple of days, weeks, I don't know, for this to settle down because it's something new, and liquidity needs to build up as well. So it's not too much slippage on external markets, etc., etc. But after this acclimatization period, we should have a very interesting rate, something that adds a interesting new dynamic to DeFi.
Interesting. So, okay, so let's say I want to open up a position. I think you called it a trove in V1. Is it
Yeah,
still
it's
called a
just a
trove?
loan. Exactly, it's the same terminology.
Okay. So I want to open up a new position in V2. I go through your front end. Obviously, like setting an interest rate in that scenario is a big deal. How are you helping users set or find the right interest rate?
That's a great question. Users are familiar with taking out a loan or borrowing on Aave. They have to deposit some kind of collateral. That's the first step. And then they need to take a certain amount of debt out. So this is collateral step one. Loan is step two. We are introducing a third step. You need to set your own interest rate. How do you set that? Well, in the front end, you will have a histogram where you will see how the distribution of debt across interest rates is. You might see there is a cluster around 4.5% where there is 20 million of debt. You might see a 50 million cluster of 5.5%. So if you want to be conservative and very safe from redemptions, you would position yourself at 5.6%, for example. So you will look at clusters on that histogram, and then based on your priorities, whether you want to very actively manage your loan or be very passive, you will then set your rate wherever you want. You can also split up this position into various loans. So you might have 20% of your loan risky and 80% passive. That's possible too because you can have multiple loans on the same wallet, on the same address. But this histogram, which will be also in an extended form on our Dune dashboard, is the main way to orient yourself in the interest rate space, so to say.
Okay, that reminds me a bit with the Uniswap V3 when you provide concentrated liquidity, the things you see. Interesting. By
Exactly.
the way, yeah, I've seen some screenshots about the UI. I was really impressed. Like, I'm eager to try it out once it's fully live.
I mean, as you
Uh,
said, that's really a very important step, and we wanted to make it as clear and as friendly as possible. So happy to hear that you like it.
yeah. I was actually thinking about copying it for something else, but no, it looked really nice. Okay, let's talk about a big topic for me personally, which is the trade-off between immutability and having the ability to upgrade things.
Mm.
Okay, so especially in stable coins, because you have this, when you're building Uniswap, it's basically done. You do your swaps. We can talk about efficiency and stuff, but I think the core thing just works. In stable coins, you have the issue of collateral types, right? And okay, Liquity V2 is immutable. I think you have ETH and staked ETH as collateral types, right?
And Rocket, yes, those three.
Okay, and RETH. What I think, are you guys thinking about, okay, what happens if we have like in 4 years we have something like staked ETH again? Some kind of revolution in this space or something, and 90% of people use that, want to use that as collateral. How are you guys thinking about that? So in this case, the would be the solution, okay, we're gonna launch V3.
Mhm.
Okay, I see.
I mean, I'm not implying that is the solution. I want to maybe talk a little bit about our philosophy or outlook on the crypto
Yeah,
space.
please.
So when V1 launched, that is pretty much that coincides with Lido starting to get popular. So staked ETH. We didn't include it at that time because it was a new asset, and we do not include anything that is not to a certain degree Lindy, at least. So we didn't want to include it. Now, 3 years later, it is a valuable asset in our space. So is our ETH, and we decided to expand our collateral assets from ETH and adding two major LSTs, because this is also probably the most requested feature or upgrade that we received from our users, and it makes sense in this situation. Now with all the LRTs or potential new tokens that will come up, it's again the same situation as it was 4 years ago. A new asset is coming up, but it's not ripe for us personally to include. So we will just stick with what we find safe enough and what can be safely used for the foreseeable future. Experience shows that there is quite a lot of capital which is happy to hold their wealth in those major assets, and they want to use it in a CDP or in a protocol which stands for similar or has similar security concerns. So even though we are missing out on some new degen collateral types or users, we are still getting a lot of people who are more security minded and stability minded. So I think it's a trade-off which we are happy to take. We are happy to serve this niche and just feel comfortable in it. How we are at least partially countering that is with the friendly fork approach in V2. So V2 is launching under a business license, and teams who are licensing it are getting exclusive rights to either deploy on an EVM chain, so exclusive right for Base, for Arbitrum, whatever, or exclusive rights for certain collateral tokens on mainnet or whatever. So on mainnet, we have one fork which will use LRTs, so they will serve that market. We have a fork which will use DeFi tokens as collateral, so the Aves, the Makers, the Fraxes, and that's how we are kind of future-proofing our design.
Yeah, the friendly forking program is so interesting to me. So is it exactly the same thing, just different collateral types?
To a large degree, yes. Most of the forks will not be immutable, so they will allow certain changes. The deal is kind of like that. You are allowed to change the code base to a certain degree, so the changes must be approved by the core team, by our devs, and all changes must be audited by firms we approve of. So most or all forks will have minimal changes. This is mostly around the new collateral types, adding of new collateral types later on, and some governance mechanics which come into play with those dynamics.
Okay. Liquity V1 was one of the most forked protocols in the space, right?
Yeah, we are in the top 10, I think, with about 40 forks.
Interesting. Okay, so why not just, have the business license and deploy yourself on Base, Arbitrum, Optimism, etc.?
A very good question. On one side, it is time. It's very time intensive to deploy anything anywhere, as you surely know. On the other thing, is we really wanted to have people on board which are vested into this ecosystem. So there are people who are really interested in Base or Arbitrum or Barochain or whatever, and those people have a network there. Those people have interest to see this chain thrive, and they are the best. They are the best. What's the English word? Ambassadors for the protocol, then, and for the success of this fork on that chain as well. They have the connections in the foundation with validators or whatever, and they can funnel the necessary resources much better, much more efficient than we as outsiders would. And yeah, so it's mostly a time and network or vested interest reason.
Okay, but every friendly fork, it's a completely different stablecoin, right?
Yes.
Okay, how are you guys thinking about liquidity fragmentation, stuff like that? Liquidity is always king in DeFi.
Yeah.
If you have like, I don't know, how many friendly forks were announced to this day?
Announced 6 or 7, but signed contracts and in stealth is around 15 in total.
Wow. Okay, so basically, okay, there are gonna be 15 different stable coins that all need liquidity somehow.
Exactly.
Sounds like a, yeah, harder issue.
Well, I mentioned in the beginning that we are serving a niche and we are happy in that niche, and this also
Okay.
partially answers this question. So Bolt, the V2 official stablecoin, will benefit from all the forks on mainnet and also on their respective chains. So all forks are committed to incentivize LP pools on mainnet, but more funds will be directed towards incentivizing the their stable Bolt pool on their chain. So Bolt will have liquidity incentives at the same time on 15 EVM chains. So liquidity and interest to LP Bolt should be very high. So we are benefiting in terms of bootstrapping capital to a very high degree from forks, or how we call it, forkonomics. And then on the other side, the liquidity fragmentation for the forks. The idea of that fork and the idea of giving exclusivity for each chain is that this stablecoin and this protocol should primarily exist and serve the ARP ecosystem, the Bearer ecosystem, the Hyperliquid ecosystem. It should be the core liquidity venue and the core stablecoin on that EVM. And as such, it will be paired with Bolt and other stablecoins on that chain. It should get incentives also from the foundation, who would be interested in having a presumably very safe and proven CDP on their chain. And more importantly, not having to pay for USDC and USDT liquidity, mercenary capital, to get onto their chain. So they get free stablecoin liquidity. They can borrow against ARP token, against Hype token for free. They do not have to compete against each other to get stablecoin mercenaries onto their chain and pay 7, 10, 12% or whatever for that benefit. They are getting stablecoin liquidity for free with the purpose of serving their chain specifically. Does it
Okay.
make sense?
A little bit. I'm really excited to see it in practice, to be honest with you. Like the whole friendly fork approach, 15 stable coins in practice. That's gonna be something I will follow closely. Because even like, I worked on Dyad, also a stable coin. It's hard. It's hard to get liquidity even for one stable coin, let alone for 15. Obviously, you have bigger reach, Liquidity is a bigger brand, etc. But yeah, this cross-chain approach, again, I think is the first time a protocol does this. Gonna be really interesting to see it play out.
I think an undervalued benefit is also this mind share that we are getting from getting all of those smart people into our boat, so to say. So we all have a vested interest then to see this experiment succeed. And there are many well-known CT people who have not announced themselves yet that they are on board, but they are building forks. So I think it will be quite the impactful proposition once everything is
Listen,
out.
it's great marketing. It's great marketing. Like 20, I feel like 20% of my Twitter feed is Liquity and Liquity forks. Just
That's good to hear.
No, from a marketing perspective, it definitely works. One thing I want to talk about as well is security. I think Liquity is one of the protocols that takes security really, really serious. I think V1 to this day never had an exploit or an issue, which is very rare in this space. I talked recently with Alex from Recon, who works on auditing liquidity stuff. What's your approach here? Like when did V2 started to go into audits? How long does it take? I would personally love to know how much money you spend on this, but you don't need to say, of course. Just talk to me about the process.
I'll try to do it justice, even though I'm not closely involved with it. So it's similar to V1. There's a lot of manual testing. So the devs wrote a ton of manual tests, a lot of fuzzing, and then of course economic modeling, which this year or last year was done by Chaos Lab. For V1 it was by Gauntlet, and also then of course security related audits. So the economic side is important because we need to make sure that from a macro perspective things make sense, and some of the auditors are more economically focused or also economically focused, while others are more mathematically focused. We worked with, I believe, 5 or 6 teams. I mentioned, or you mentioned Recon, so Alex, who also audited actually a lot of forks, official ones and unofficial ones. I mentioned Chaos Lab, and there's Chectora, there's Chain Security, there is DDoP, CoinSpect, and I think that is it. And we had a Hats bounty. So with CoinSpect and Chain Security and DDoP, we worked already for V1. It was a great collaboration. We're very happy with it, and they are kind of cross-checking each other's work as well, because sometimes we are double or triple checking, and the whole process in terms of timeline started, I believe, early summer. So audits are ongoing pretty much continuously since 7-8 months, with many man hours put in continuously, but also, as I said, cross-checking things 2 and 3 times. And yeah, in terms of funds, it's in the hundreds of thousands, as you can imagine. And that's also when people say, when we go, or okay, if we talk about business licenses, so a lot of people didn't like that we went, or not a lot, but some people didn't like that the code is not open source. But then if you consider that you paid for V1, maybe a marketing, security team, all of that, it's getting into millions, and then someone forks it, slaps a token on top and benefits out of it. I mean, I
Yeah.
personally am bothered by that, because we spent 18 months and $2 million of funds, and I mean, you are just copy pasting the code and adding 2 collateral tokens and benefiting from it, and not giving anything back, or even claiming that that's original code. I mean, I personally do not like that kind of stance. I think it's not moral or ethical, but yeah. Anyway, I digress. But it takes a lot of time and a lot of money to put something on its feet. We are also, of course, emotionally tied into this project, because we worked so much time on it. We really want to see it succeed. It's a piece of our blood and guts, so to say. And yeah, very, very excited, everyone on the team, to see it go live very, very soon.
Amazing. And yeah, one truth for people that never deployed anything on mainnet, the biggest entry in this space is audits. Like if you cannot afford audits, you have a big problem actually,
Yeah,
which is true. It's like the biggest barrier to entry, in my opinion. One thing I wanted to share, let me share that really quick, is something we talked about, shared by Sam from the Liquity team. This is the front end piece that I was talking about. Can you see that, Bojan?
not yet,
Okay.
but I think
Uh,
it's coming.
it's called, well, it's the setting of interest rate that
The
I was so
slider.
impressed with. Yes, the famous slider.
Okay.
The famous slider, and okay, maybe you can't see it, but people watching this will see it. Yeah, this is what I was talking about with Bojan before. You can see here the slider and the bars going up. This is where most people deposit, and I think that's a really clever way to do this.
Yeah, I
Um,
can see it now.
okay,
Uh,
okay.
this is testnet, I guess. I mean, obviously it's testnet, yeah.
Yeah,
So once it will be live on mainnet for a couple of weeks, the distribution will be much more useful, because right now it's not that much capital, not that many positions in there. But yeah, this histogram is what will be used to decide on where to set your rate. But you can see also there a button which says manual. There are also other ways to set a rate, which I haven't mentioned yet, which is that you can delegate it to a manager. So there will be third parties which will manage your rate for your on your behalf. The idea with that is that you kind of get the best of both worlds. You get a passive position. You don't have to, because someone else is setting the rate, and it should still be reasonably cheap. So it should still be efficient and in line with what other people do. So yeah, it's kind of best of both worlds. But there will be a small fee for that delegate. But yeah, that's
no,
that.
that's a really good feature to have. What I really like here as well is the green, yellow, orange thing for just, setting amount. This is really clever as well. Whoever did, or ever doing UI, UX at Liquity is doing a good job. Um,
Yeah, thank you.
awesome. Awesome, Boyan. Then, yeah, these were the, big questions I had. Obviously, I was really in the trenches because as of recently, I was, building this other stable coin.
Yeah, I know.
So it was really interesting to talk to you about this. Any questions from your side, maybe? Something you wanna get my perspective on?
Uh, I, I actually wanted to hear about touch upon the topic of immutability again.
Hmm.
I mean, it's a two-sided sword. If something happens, you can't really quickly patch up something. On the other side, being immutable gets rid of many or most attack vectors because they are most attacks or hacks happen via some backdoor change that was left open. So we are trying to be immutable to get rid of those governance exploit or however you want to call it. On the other side, it's very, very risky to deploy. That's why we are doing so many audits to kind of iron it really out. But what's your perspective on this dilemma?
Yeah, I thought about this a lot actually. And okay, so when I got in this space like 5 years ago, I was like, this is about immutability. This is the thing. If you build something, it has to be immutable before you deploy it. But once I started working on actual protocols, um, and it's not even about security as much as just finding product market fit. You know, like sometimes you just need to add a feature, add something, add a collateral type, add a tokenomics thing. And in my opinion, I think it can be a process, right? Like, okay, you start off with, okay, uh, this thing is upgradable. You actually have just a multisig that can do stuff. And once you have like a product market fit, maybe in terms of TVL, maybe at like 10 million TVL, you move that to governance. Okay. And at 100 million TVL, you remove governance completely. But just to make sure that you're not deploying something that no one actually uses or wants. And you spend all that marketing and all that hyping up of the protocol for nothing in the end. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
So this is how I think about it. Obviously, bigger teams with a lot of funds like Uniswap, they just throw like $10 million into audits and do a V4, you know? Not everyone can do that. You have one shot at this most of the time. Um, and you need that flexibility in order to just, okay, I'm doing something right here. People actually want to use this. And once you're there, I'm philosophically with you 100%. Immutability is the way. I personally only use DeFi things that are immutable. But yeah, you need to get there first. This is how I think about it.
interesting statement that you use only immutable stuff.
Yeah.
Why do you think that not more people value that higher?
Good question. No one cares.
I know, but I mean, you were in this space because you're attracted to some ideals that this space was built on. So
Yes.
why just look at money or larger at money or at yield?
Well, in that case, for example, you have investors, you have, you need to succeed in some way at least. Obviously, if you're bootstrapping something, you can do whatever you want. Uh, but just in general, it's a sad truth, but it's the truth. No one cares.
People do not care until they need something like that. But then
Yes.
if they don't vote with their money, where teams are motivated to build such safety nets in the end, no one will build a safety net to use when you need it, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, I'm totally with you. Like, but me, for example, I'm not the typical user, before I use something in DeFi, I go on GitHub and look at the contracts. And no one does that.
yeah,
And I think the expectation is like a normal retail user is not gonna read code. And I actually think like Bojan, which is interesting, like with the new administration and things that's coming. I think this will matter less and less actually. Like I think if you are in a space where you make it really hard for DeFi protocols to interact with the real world and somehow, and that everything has to live on chain. Immutability and stuff like that really matters. But if you really regulate it and there's a clear pathway for something to do like a Web 2.5 thing in the middle, which a lot of people are doing, obviously.
Yeah.
People just see the APY, the yield in the end.
Yeah, and ease of use and being safe,
Exactly.
protected by the government or whatever.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, we'll have to see how those US changes will play out in the end.
Yeah.
I think that the decentralized audience is still slowly growing, so people do value that. What I seem to notice more and more is people getting less into degen plays, or not getting less in degen plays, valuing blue chip yields and protocols more and more. I think that just after users reach a certain evaluation of their personal portfolio, they're allocating more and more into the Aves and into the makers and hopefully V2. So this liquidity does grow, which is good for us in the end. Yeah, I'm optimistic that we will have more of that capital and more decentralization first-minded people in the future.
We will always have that. But yeah, I think the majority is just, we are in the minority, unfortunately. But for example, for Dyad, if I could go back in time, I would deploy it on an L2. I would definitely deploy it on L2. But
that's another interesting topic, if you need to be deployed on L2 or no.
It's like, look at the TVLs on L2, right? And to this day, okay, there are plans to decentralize the sequencer and stuff, and obviously you can force transactions on L1 and stuff like that. But is it really decentralized? I think we don't have maybe I'm wrong here, but I don't think we had an active fraud proof to this day on any optimistic chain to this day. Don't quote me on that, but this was true like at least 7 months ago. So you know what I mean? Like if you look at Solana and stuff like that, people really don't care that much. But at least we're on the safe side. I know I can sleep very good at night. I know where my money is. I trust in layer 1. I trust in Ethereum. And the other ones, not as well. But yeah, let's hope for the best, I guess. Bojan, I really enjoyed this, man.
Likewise. Thank you for having me.
For sure. Yeah, I wish you all the best for the launch. I'm gonna follow it closely. Obviously, big fan of decentralized stablecoins myself. So yeah, good luck to yourself and the team. And yeah, I'm gonna put all the necessary links in the description down below. Docs, Twitters, Discord, whatever I find are gonna be in this GitHub. Most important thing
for users to check.
GitHub. Yes, look at the contracts. You're gonna learn a lot. So yeah, Bojan, thank you very much.
Perfect. Appreciate it. Thank you very much, sir.
All right. Thank you guys for tuning in, and see you in the next one. Bye bye.